Welcome to the Jeff Crilley Show. And now, here's Jeff Crilley.
Welcome back to the Jeff Crilley Show. This is one of my favorite subjects is cybersecurity because who of us hasn't been threatened by it or received the email from Nigeria? My next guest is Scott Geye. He is with Whitley Penn. It's one of the larger CPA and accounting firms in the country. Welcome to the Jeff Crilley Show.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Now, you have a unique role within the company. Tell us about it.
So I've been with Whitley Penn for a very long time. I started when I was probably 19, came up through their IT department, and now I'm kind of in the audit practice, kind of advising our clients about cybersecurity risk, helping them improve their posture, their cybersecurity controls, and just trying to – what our profession is about across the industry is just helping people do better. So kind of that's where I'm in. It's interesting just to be in and see a lot of different companies across spectrums, and just see how this issue affects a lot of different people.
And many companies don't even really think about what their employees could do that could get the whole company in trouble. Let's talk about some do's and some don'ts. How can employees mess things up by downloading things or?
So, there's lots of ways that employees can mess it up, and this is a big part of it is that people need to understand you can't leave this on the IT people. It requires everybody to be involved in it. But, say for downloading, installing things, everything that you install can potentially have vulnerabilities in it. So the more things that employees install that's not managed by IT, if that's not kept up to date, what you're creating is risk around those applications that aren't maintained. But, not just installing applications. Really what we're seeing a lot of right now is, you're using a password at some website and that gets compromised. If you're using the same password for your bank account, for your credit card, online account, for your company email, now that password's been stolen from some website, now those attackers are able to use that to get in to those other resources, drain your bank account, steal intellectual property from companies. And there's an entire fraudulent marketplace to support this, which is what most people don't really understand.
You were telling me off the air that you're doing a lot of speaking these days. Who do you speak to?
So, actually yesterday I gave a presentation at ISC Squared, which is kind of the group that administers the CISSP, the Certified Information System Security Professionals. So it really is just cybersecurity, information security professionals. As a firm, we have a lot of events that are to educate our clients. So whether it be financial institutions, we do an event for them, oil and gas, we do an event for them, public sector, state, local governments, school districts, we give a presentation for them. So as kind of the lead on cybersecurity, I get pulled into a lot of those different events to speak. So I'm everybody in the certification world, whether it be CPAs, lawyers, everybody complains about continuing professional education credits. I get all mine through presentations, so I don't have to worry about that.
That's awesome. So when you first start working with a new client, do you meet with their IT department, or who do you contact first?
So usually, it's a kind of different. As being an auditor, our customer is usually different from what an IT consultant is. So usually, a CIO, or if it's a small company, just the president, the IT director is contacting them. Audit is usually working on behalf of the board, on behalf of the audit committee, on behalf of the CIO or the CFO. So it really kind of depends. But generally, we want to meet with the owners of the business. You want to get a view of what is the owners, the boards, the directors, executives, what's their oversight over that function, how are they governing it, what's their understanding, their level of knowledge, and then diving down and meeting with people across the business processes, owners, and IT, just to get an understanding of how it all fits together.
You were telling me off the air that some people don't even realize that they're in credit cards. What was that story?
So, a lot of people don't really understand. This is a big problem with credit card data is a lot of merchants that are processing cards don't understand the risk they're taking on. And to be honest, a lot of the people selling those payment applications aren't really communicating those risks, so they're misleading those customers. If you enter credit cards on your computer, there's a risk there. Even if it ends up in some other service provider's data center somewhere, if it's on your computer, there's a risk that those can be stolen before they're transmitted off. So I see a lot of companies out there, they're unwittingly taking on risks in the way they're processing credit cards. Now, maybe it's a low risk. If you're a small business, you're not doing a whole lot of credit cards. The fraud risk in the grand scheme of things is low. But, you've opened that door to, the risk of your company getting breached and having those credit cards stolen, having fraud committed, being liable for buying fraud monitoring services, for replacing those cards. So it is a real business risk.
And I know the hospital industry right now is being plagued with this ransomware attack where the bad guys will just take over a website and demand money to release it, won't they? And
it's not even just the website. And the healthcare industry has real issues, because when you look at, say, like an MRI machine or a CAT scan machine, those machines may be running Windows. And you can't just apply patches to them in the same way you will to a system. They've got to go through a whole certification process with the FDA. So the healthcare industry itself is in a real tough position. And it's not just taking over your website. I mean, it's your electronic health record system. It's all those systems where you can then be held, they can lock the system down and make you pay a fine. We've seen it. There was one in Hollywood where a hospital paid, I think, $17,000 to get access back into their systems. That's getting to be a more common occurrence, and it's not just healthcare. I mean, we see it impacting non-healthcare clients. Ransomware is a real issue that's across business. But the nice thing about ransomware is if you keep good backups of your data, you can just recover your data, and you don't have to pay the ransom.
It seems like with all the smart people we have, we could stay one step ahead of the hackers. Do you see this as a chess match? And if so, who's winning?
I mean, it very much is a chess match. And, the problem is, as a company defending yourself, you have to be right 100% of the time. The attackers only have to be right once. And the game has changed. And, to be clear, I've been around this for a very long time. Let's say when I was a junior in high school, I was actually banned from touching computers for a year.
Really? How much time did you serve? No.
And actually, I didn't get in trouble because I wasn't doing anything malicious. I actually saw the principal a couple of years ago that did that, and we had a good laugh about the whole situation. But, I've been around the hacking world for a very long time.
Sure.
The tools have advanced a great deal. There's very sophisticated and very easy to use tools available now. And there's this, if you're familiar with the dark net, what people call, which is, really kind of the underbelly of the internet, where the worst of the worst happens, from all the hacking to child pornography to whatever else. This is where it exists on the internet. And this entire marketplace has evolved around fraud as a service. So you can buy the tools, you can get training on the tools, you can get customer support from the hackers selling the tools. Mm-hmm. You can steal information and put it on there for sale so that the people that know how to use it to commit fraud can monetize it. So there's this entire marketplace that's driving this fraud, and it's really driven the skill level down necessary to do this. And this is converging with just the greater availability of the internet. So we see, like, say, Nigeria, for example, they're getting broader access to cheap devices, internet, but at the same time, their culture, committing this fraud is not necessarily wrong in their culture. Mm. So that's just kind of a unique challenge that's presenting itself, is that as the internet becomes more available and these tools become more available and these cultures that aren't against fraud, now they can communicate and commit fraud against all of our companies. So it's really is a convergence of the technology and everything coming together.
What about cell phones? Can the bad guys get into your company computers through an employee's cell phone?
It's possible. Now, cell phones, just the architecture of them versus a computer, are a little different. They're less prone to what we call viruses or worms. There are malicious applications. Say, your Bank of America app. Mm-hmm. If you use Bank of America, if you don't get that from the trusted source, somebody can make a fake Bank of America app that looks just like the real one and steal your banking credentials. Mm. That's kind of where, like, more of the problem is. But as we see a proliferation of applications and, Flash players, Java, things onto those phones, we are going to see an advancement of risk of those phones getting hacked. And if you have your company email on there, it's more about your passwords getting stolen. And that's really what the really good hackers do. They aren't installing viruses or malware. They're just getting your passwords and acting like a normal user.
Let's give some password advice, because they always come up with the list, and the most common password is password, and the second one is 1 2 3 4 5.
Those switched a couple years ago. Now 1 2 3 4 5 is the most popular.
Okay. So somebody told me one time that you need to get creative. So if you were doing the word Mississippi, only the 2 of the S's are dollar signs. That's a harder password to hack.
Now, here's the real problem for somebody like me, because one thing that I will do if I'm doing a penetration test, which is when I'm trying to hack into a company that's hired me to do that.
Right.
I have a tool that I can take a word list, and let's say Mississippi's in there. It will automatically do those sorts of transformation to the words and create a dictionary of those passwords.
Really, even with the dollar signs.
So it will automatically go through. If I have Mississippi in my list, it will automatically replace the S's with dollar signs, and then I can use that to try and guess passwords.
No kidding. So even that's not.
The real problem is we've created. It's gotten so hard to make passwords. We've made them very hard for us as people to remember them, but they're actually pretty easy for computers to guess.
Really?
So fundamentally, passwords are broken. The industry acknowledges that. The problem is we don't have a good replacement.
So what advice is there for people who want to remember their passwords and want to also be safe?
So you really need to look at a password management system like KeePass, LastPass are 2 examples where these programs will store your passwords in kind of an encrypted vault. And then you can have them enter that password into the site as you get. You have to remember a very strong password to get into that vault, and maybe you write that down and store that in a very secure place. Not put it under your keyboard or stick it to your monitor, but you know. That way you're able to use stronger passwords that maybe you can't remember, but the application can. That's really the most effective way. But if you're a company, you really need to be looking at going beyond passwords. You need to look at 2-factor authentication, whether a secure token that rotates every minute, so that if your passwords are stolen, it's not effective. You can't be used as a stolen password to get into your company's resources. Wow,
this is a great segment. Scott, what's your website?
So it's whitleypenn.com. That's WHITLEYPENN.com.
Excellent. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
When we come back, when you want to save some big bucks on your water bill and save the planet while you're at it, I'll tell you how to go green and save green with a new app. That's next on The Jeff Crilley Show.
More of The Jeff Crilley Show coming up.